You are not being loved, you are being used, and the worst part, you probably already felt it. Something felt off, something felt hollow. Like you were always giving and they were always just there, taking, receiving, never quite showing up the way you needed them to. And yet, you stayed because they gave you just enough to keep you hooked, just enough warmth to make you second guess your gut, just enough attention to make you feel like maybe this time would be different. But here's the truth, nobody is telling you. An avoidant person who is using you is not the same as an avoidant person who loves you but struggles. Those two things look almost identical on the surface, and that is exactly why so many people end up wasting months, sometimes years, pouring themselves into someone who is never going to pour back. Today, we are going to talk about the 5 signs that an avoidant is not just struggling with closeness, they are actually using you. And by the end of this, you will know exactly what to look for. You will stop second-guessing yourself, and you will finally have the clarity you have been desperately searching for. But before we get into it, if this is the kind of content that makes you feel seen and finally understood, drop the word clarity in the comments right now. Just that one word, clarity, because that is what we are here to find together. And make sure you are subscribed because we go deep on this stuff every single week, and you do not want to miss what is coming next. Now let us get into it. Sign number 1, they only show up when they need something. Think about the last few weeks. Think carefully. When did they reach out to you? What was happening in their life at that moment? Were they stressed? Were they lonely? Had something gone wrong? Had they just had a bad week at work? A fight with a friend? A moment where the emptiness of their life caught up with them? Because here's what I want you to notice. An avoidant who genuinely cares about you will reach out in their good moments too. They will think of you when something funny happens. They will text you when they see something that reminds them of you. They will want to share their wins with you, not just their wounds. But an avoidant who is using you, they only appear when the tank is empty. They only come around when they need to be filled up, when they need comfort or company or validation or just someone to sit with so they do not have to feel the weight of being alone. And as soon as that need is met, as soon as the tank has enough in it again, they disappear. They pull back, they go quiet, they get distant, and you are left standing there wondering what you did wrong. You did not do anything wrong. That is the thing. You did not suddenly become less interesting or less attractive or less worthy. They just got what they came for. And that is a brutal thing to realize, but it is also the most liberating thing you can understand. Because when you finally see that pattern, when you finally connect the dots between their reaching out and their need in that moment, you stop blaming yourself. You stop replaying conversations trying to figure out where you went wrong. You start to see the relationship not as something you are failing at, but as something you were never designed to win in the first place. An avoidant who uses you is strategic, even if they are not conscious of it. They are not sitting down and planning this out like some kind of villain. Most of the time, it is not even deliberate. It is just the way they have learned to relate to people. They learn that people are useful, people are resources, people meet needs. And when the need is gone, so is the urgency to be present. This is not about them being evil. It is about them being emotionally immature in a way that is costing you something real. Your time, your emotional energy, your hope, and you deserve better than being someone's emotional pit stop. So the question to ask yourself is this: when they come to you, what did they need? And when they get it, do they stay or do they vanish? If the answer is vanish, that is your first sign. Sign number 2, they keep the relationship permanently undefined. This one is where people get stuck the longest. And I want you to really hear this, because this sign alone has kept more people trapped than almost anything else. An avoidant who is using you has a deep vested interest in keeping things blurry. They do not want to define the relationship. They do not want to put a label on it. They get uncomfortable when the conversation moves toward commitment. They say things like, can we just let things be natural? Or why do we need to put a label on it? Or I just do not want to ruin what we have. And here is the trap. Those words sound almost romantic. They sound like someone who is so invested in the connection that they do not want to mess it up with something as rigid as a label. And you, because you are someone who genuinely cares, you give them the benefit of the doubt. You think, okay, maybe they are right. Maybe I am being too rigid. Maybe this is just their way of loving freely. But I want you to zoom out for a second and look at what that ambiguity is actually doing in your life. It is keeping you available. It is keeping you from looking elsewhere. It is keeping you emotionally invested in someone who has not actually committed to investing in you. The undefined relationship is not romantic. It is convenient. It is convenient for them. When you are undefined, they get all the benefits of having you around without any of the responsibility of showing up for you consistently. They can take your time, your attention, your affection, your support, and if you ever dare to express a need, they can retreat behind the excuse that you were never really together anyway. That is the cruelest part of the ambiguity game. It gives them an escape hatch at every single turn. Whenever you need something real, whenever you express a legitimate emotional need, they can always pull back and say, I never promised you anything. And technically they are right because they never did, because they made sure they never had to. A person who loves you and struggles with avoidance is different. They feel guilt about the lack of definition. They acknowledge it. They have conversations with you about it, even if those conversations are hard. They do not weaponize the ambiguity against you. They do not use it as a shield. But a person who is using you, the undefined status is intentional. Maybe not consciously planned, but functionally intentional because it serves them perfectly. So ask yourself this question honestly. How long have things been undefined? And in that time, has there been genuine movement towards something more? Or has it just been the same holding pattern month after month, maybe year after year, when nothing changes except your level of hope and exhaustion? If it has just been the same holding pattern, that is your second sign. Sign number 3, your needs consistently come last. This one's going to sting a little, but I need to say it because it matters. In a relationship where an avoidant is using you, there's almost always a consistent and very clear hierarchy. Their feelings come first, their comfort comes first, their needs, their timing, their pace, their emotional bandwidth, all of it takes priority always. And the tricky part is that this can happen in a way that feels almost logical because avoidants often frame their limitations as needs. They say things like, I need space. I need things to be low pressure. I need you to be patient with me. And those things are real. People do need space. People do need patience. Avoidant attachment is a real thing that comes from real pain. But here's the distinction. A healthy relationship, even one where someone has avoidant tendencies, involves reciprocity. It involves a recognition that two people have needs, not just one. And there is a real effort, even if imperfect, to honor both. What you are experiencing when an avoidant is using you is not that. What you are experiencing is a one-way street that has been dressed up to look like a two-way street. You get just enough small moments of consideration to make you feel like it is balanced. But when you actually tally it, when you sit down and honestly count, how often do they adjust for you? How often do they stretch beyond their comfort for your sake? How often do they show up in a way that costs them something? If the answer is rarely or never, that is not avoidance. That is selfishness wrapped in the language of avoidance. Because here is what real love looks like, even in an avoidant. It looks like discomfort. It looks like a person pushing against their own instincts because they care about you enough to try. It looks like awkward conversations they would rather not have, but have anyway because you matter to them. It looks like showing up even when showing up is hard. You showing up and doing all the adjusting, all the accommodating, all the shrinking of your needs so that they stay comfortable. That is not love either. That is caretaking. And when caretaking becomes the foundation of a relationship, only one person is actually in a relationship. The other person is just being taken care of. You deserve someone who is in a relationship with you, not someone who is being serviced by you. And I know that is hard to hear because you genuinely care about this person. But caring about someone does not mean accepting a dynamic where your needs are irrelevant. Your needs are not inconvenient extras. They are fundamental parts of who you are, and a person who loves you will treat them that way. So look at the last month, look at the last 3 months. When you had a hard day, did they show up? When you needed reassurance, did they offer it? When you needed something specific and expressed it clearly, did they try to give it to you? Or did they make you feel like you were asking for too much? Because feeling like you are too much for someone who never actually commits is a very specific kind of pain. And it is a pain that tells you something important. It tells you that the dynamic is off, that the reciprocity is missing, and that is your third sign. Sign number 4, they keep you emotionally close but physically and practically distant. This is one of the most confusing signs because it plays directly with your emotions in a way that makes you feel bonded while simultaneously keeping the relationship from growing into anything real. An avoidant who is using you knows, consciously or not, that emotional intimacy is the hook. It is the thing that makes you feel connected. It is the thing that makes you feel special. It is the thing that makes you think nobody else gets to see this side of them. And that is true. Nobody else does. But the question is not whether the emotional intimacy is real. The question is what it is being used for. They have late night conversations with you, deep ones, vulnerable ones. They tell you things they have never told anyone. They let you in emotionally in these intense, powerful moments that make you feel like the two of you have something rare and extraordinary. And in those moments, you are not wrong. Something real is happening. You are not making it up. But then watch what happens when things try to move forward. Watch what happens when you suggest meeting their friends or integrating your lives in any practical way or planning something that requires them to show up in a concrete, real-world way. Suddenly the walls go up. Suddenly they are busy. Suddenly things get complicated and vague and they need space. The emotional closeness is real, but it is controlled. It is given to you in doses. In these carefully managed moments of intimacy, that feel profound because they are starved of everything else. And that starvation is the point. When you are emotionally hungry, even the smallest meal feels like a feast. They let you close enough to feel connected, but never close enough to actually become a real part of their life. You are inside their heart, but somehow still outside their actual world. You know their deepest fears, but you have never met their closest friends. You have had their most vulnerable moments, but you are not in their everyday life in any meaningful way. That gap, the gap between emotional access and real-world inclusion, is the sign. Because real love does not just let you into someone's feelings. It lets you into their life, it integrates you, it makes you part of the fabric of their day-to-day existence, not just their late-night emotional overflow. And this is where so many people get trapped. Because the emotional intimacy feels so real and so significant that it becomes the justification for everything else. You think, but they told me things they have never told anyone. That means this is real. That means we have something. And yes, you do have something, but something is not everything. And something is not enough if it never grows into anything more. Ask yourself this. Are you in their life or just in their heart? Because being in someone's heart while being excluded from their life is a form of emotional use. They get the relief of emotional connection. They get the comfort of feeling understood and seen, but they do not have to do the work of actually building a life with you. And you are left with intensity, but no structure, depth, but no foundation. That is your fourth sign. Sign number 5, your growth threatens them. This is the one that people least expect, and honestly, it is the one that reveals the most. When an avoidant is using you, one of the things they need most is for you to stay exactly where you are. They need you to remain emotionally available. They need you to remain in this limbo of hoping and waiting. They need the dynamic to stay the same because the dynamic as it is serves them. So what happens when you start to change? What happens when you start to grow? What happens when you start developing yourself, investing in your own life, pulling back slightly, or even just getting clearer about what you want and what you will not accept? If they genuinely love you, even with their avoidant tendencies, your growth will be something they admire. They might feel threatened by it in the short term, yes, but ultimately they will be proud. They will be moved. They will feel something shift in themselves because watching you value yourself will make them value you more. But if they are using you, your growth is a problem because your growth means the dynamic is changing. Your growth means that easy access is becoming less easy. Your growth means you are starting to see yourself as someone worth fighting for, and that threatens the arrangement. So watch how they respond when you start leveling up. Watch how they respond when you pull back a little. Watch how they respond when you start filling your life with other things, other people, your own goals, your own momentum. Do they suddenly become more attentive? Do they suddenly want to see you more? Do they suddenly start showing up in ways they never showed up before? And before you take that as a sign that they love you, I want you to sit with this question. Is this the person who should have been showing up all along, finally waking up? Or is this a person who feels their resource becoming unavailable and is doing just enough to keep it accessible? Because there is a version of increased attention that is love waking up. And there's a version of increased attention that is control trying to maintain its grip. And the way you tell the difference is by watching what happens next. Do the changes they make last? Do they sustain the effort? Do they actually shift the dynamic in a real and consistent way? Or do they just do enough to bring you back into the waiting room and then slowly return to exactly how things were before? An avoidant who loves you will feel destabilized by your growth, but ultimately rise to meet it. An avoidant who is using you will try to pull you back down to where you were. They will become subtly dismissive of the things you are building. They will make comments that undermine your confidence. They will find ways to keep you doubting yourself. Because a you that doubts yourself is a you that stays available. This is not always obvious. It is often subtle. It is a comment here, a tone there, a slightly cool response to your excitement about something new in your life, a way of redirecting the conversation back to their needs whenever you start talking about yours. Little things, small things, but consistent things. And over time, those consistent small things add up to something you cannot ignore. They add up to the truth of how they see you. Not as someone they are building a future with, not as someone whose growth they celebrate, but as someone who is most useful to them when they stay small, stay hopeful, stay available, and stay in the waiting room. You were not put on this earth to wait in someone's waiting room. You were not built to shrink yourself to fit the shape of someone else's convenience. You were not made to pour everything you have into a relationship that is structured, even if unintentionally, to take from you without giving back in equal measure. And I know that this is hard. I know that when you care about someone, when you've invested time and emotion and hope into a connection, hearing that it might be built on an unequal foundation is painful. It feels like a loss. It feels like grief, and it is a kind of grief. The grief of letting go of the story you told yourself about what this relationship was and what it could become, but grief is not the end. Grief is actually the beginning of something. It is the beginning of clarity. It is the beginning of choosing yourself. It is the beginning of walking toward the kind of love that is actually built for you, not built on you. Because here is the thing about all 5 of these signs. They are not just signs of what is wrong with them. They are actually signs of what is right about you. You showed up, you cared. You stayed open and vulnerable and willing to love in a way that costs something. That is not weakness, that is courage. And it is courage that deserves to be met with equal courage. The person you are looking for, the person who is actually capable of seeing all of that in you and rising to meet it, they exist. But you will not find them while you are standing in the waiting room of someone who has never committed to opening the door. So let us recap the 5 signs. 1, they only show up when they need something. 2, they keep the relationship permanently undefined. 3, your needs consistently come last. 4, they keep you emotionally close but practically distant. 5, your growth threatens them. If you recognize more than 2 of these in your relationship right now, I want you to sit with that. Not in a panic, not in a spiral, but in a quiet, honest moment where you allow yourself to see what is actually happening. Because you already know, deep down somewhere in you, you already know. You felt it. That is why you are here. That is why this video found you. And the most powerful thing you can do right now is not to run away or blow everything up or make a dramatic decision. The most powerful thing you can do is to start valuing yourself the way you wish they would value you. Start treating your time like it matters. Start treating your needs like they are legitimate. Start acting like your love is something worth earning because it is. When you do that, one of 2 things will happen. Either they will rise to meet the new standard you are setting, which will tell you something important, or they will not, which will also tell you something important. Either way, you will finally have the clarity you have been desperately searching for. And clarity, however it comes, is always better than the aching fog of not knowing. You deserve someone who chooses you clearly, consistently, and without making you feel like a burden for needing them to. You deserve someone whose love looks like love, not like a puzzle you have to spend years trying to solve. And if nobody has told you that lately, let me be the one to tell you now. You are worth being chosen. You are worth being shown up for, and you are worth far more than being someone's emotional convenience. That is all for today. Drop clarity in the comments if this hits something real for you. Subscribe if you want more content that actually goes deep and tells you the truth. And share this with someone who needs to hear it, because chances are you know someone who does. Take care of yourself. I will see you in the next one.